Hello girls and guys, my name is Benjamin and I just want to show you my newest tool, which is called Ben's Terminal FX, which is a graphics suite for converting any image into something very retro looking. So I will go through all the features which are in it right now. There might be some additional features in the future. If you have any ideas, just give me some feedback. So let's say we want to convert an image. We can load it via the load button. We can copy and paste it from somewhere, or we can just drag and drop it inside of here. So I will just drag and drop an image, and there it is. It's very greeny, terminal looking like. And there are two main parts, the left panel and the right panel. In the left panel, we can crop it to our needs. It is already square, so if I click on square, nothing will happen. But I could zoom in, for example, and move it around in this square. So yeah, that's pretty handy, I guess. There's 4:5 portrait and 9:16 social story stuff if you want to share it on Instagram or something like that. For the nerds, I have a section called Signal Resolution where you can choose between real retro resolutions. Let's say we want to have the Game Boy resolution, which was 160 by 144. So if we click on this, you see it's very small. If we look at the right panel, this is where I change the cool stuff. So this image is, depending on the uploaded site, being downscaled to have the look of a retro image. But now we have the real Game Boy resolution, so we can change the downscale factor to 1. So these are the real pixels of the Game Boy, but it doesn't look quite Game Boy-y. Fortunately, we have a Game Boy preset up here. We can click, and now it's much more Game Boy-y, and we can fiddle around with the downscale factor. So this would be somewhat like a real Game Boy image, but I just want to work with the input resolution, so we just have more to look at. So let's go back to the square factor and let's try some presets I have here. There is a C64 preset, which is looking like this, for example. There is a Mac Plus preset. There is a newsprint preset. There are other presets which are more artistically influenced. And yeah, you can play around with the presets. They are just a starting point to do other stuff. So let's change it to Commodore 64. And here we have a button for a CRT emulation, which does this CRT lines and a little bit of glow. We can turn this on or off. I like to have it on sometimes, just because it looks cool. So then we have the palette mode, where we can choose between several palettes of several devices. So now the preset already changed the palette to Commodore 64. But we could, for example, take EGA, which does look very similar. We could change to green terminal. We could do grayscale. We could do black and white. We could do teletext. And yeah, we can change to Game Boy with the other settings that match the Commodore 64. But let's go back to Commodore 64. So we have different dithering modes. Dithering modes is how the colors and pixels are put together on the screen. So right now it's Atkinson. We can change to Floyd Steinberg, and we can change to Burks. We can change to Sarah. You have to play around with them, and you see the difference mostly if you play with a lunar gain, which is brightness, and contrast ratio. So you see the dithering just happens in a different way depending on what dithering mode you chose. So I will go back to Atkinson, I guess. So let's do this a little bit darker. Yeah, that's that. You can play around with this. There's a glitch mode that you can try. So I have a simple pixel sorting glitch here, which can go horizontal or vertical. And you can play around with this. You can invert the order, but I won't use this now. There is a RGB shift effect you can play around with and get pretty cool results. And there is a text module. So I can activate this and I can input text. Hello, I am a friendly Jedi hamster. You can use multiple lines, you can change the scaling, and it's always been rendered like it's part of the image. So the pixelation affects the text too. So we have some fonts we can choose from. And yeah, try around a bit with the fonts. We can, if you want, remove the pixelation effect from the image, and depending on the output resolution, the text will be much sharper, but the image stays pixelated. I like to have it on because it's more true. You can change the color of the font. Right now, it's always the brightest color of the palette you choose. So if I change this to terminal, it's the brightest kind of green you could get there. If I go back to Commodore 64, it's white. But I can change this if I uncheck this checkbox. So I get a color picker and choose anything I like, but the color will always be translated to the palette you chose. So if you take a color which the Commodore 64 palette cannot display, it will do something else which is similar. So it stays true to the expected look. Oh yeah, you can also move the text and you can automatically center it back again. I guess I will put it here on the top. Then you just can save it to disk. And it should be a very high resolution but pixelated image you can share anywhere. As I mentioned, you can render it into the original retro resolutions, but for most of the time you just want to have this high resolution image. The thing is, you might be fiddling around and don't want to start all over again with every image, but sometimes you will close the app or the website. You can export this setting. So you can rename it or whatever you like, but you can just export it, give it to your friend, or put it into a folder with all your favorite presets. So if I drag another image, so now if I drag and drop a new image into the window, the existing preset just will apply to this image. But let's say you start all over again and there's no text and everything is a bit different. You just can import your preset, and right there it is again. Yeah, it's cropped to square, the text is back again, the text color is back again, the text position is back again. But of course I can change this now. Like this, you can edit many images in a short amount of time. And yeah, I hope you have a lot of fun with this tool. I do have a lot of fun with the tool. And show me your best results, and yeah, tell me if you use it for social media or for other projects. I really Would love to hear your feedback. And don't forget, up here is a bypass button. So if you click on this, you can always see the original. And if you let loose, you will see the output result. Have fun!